He transplanted monkey glands into humans to make them live longer and be more sexually active. Sounds crazy, right? Well, this isn't some TikTok trend or new fringe theory. It's the legacy of a real doctor named Sergei Voronov. In the waning light of the 19th century, amid the creaking bones of empires and the uneasy breath of modern science, yet Sergei did not stop there. Voronov's results were based on subjective accounts from his patients, many of whom were already wealthy enough to indulge in copious amounts of alcohol. Basically, the effects were impossible to measure, which didn't stop the media from reporting them. As sensationalist headlines blared, Voronov's fame peaked. He gave lectures, published papers, and even sold a patent medicine version of his treatment. There was only one problem: it didn't work. Like at all. He dreamed of more. Voronov continued operations until 1931, when he died of cancer at the age of 64. That's younger than most, but still not immortal. Today, Voronov is mostly forgotten, and thank goodness for that. His procedures were more myth than medicine, more alchemy than science. But maybe that won't be true forever. You see, scientists today are discovering that aging might really be caused by glands, specifically the way they change over time, not because they stop producing hormones, but because the body becomes less responsive to them. So if we can hack that response, maybe we can live longer, healthier lives. No monkey glands required. Not just vitality, but resurrection. He kept detailed journals filled with sketches of hybrid beings, men with simian glands, monkeys with human blood. He envisioned a world where death was merely an outdated habit, cured not by prayer or potion, but by splicing. The newspapers called him a genius. The church called him a heretic. But none could look away, for in that strange golden hour between two world wars, when Europe stood unsure of God, of man, a future Voronov offered something ancient, the promise of eternal youth, paid not in virtue, but in flesh. He spoke Russian with a French lilt, thought like a Cartesian, and dreamed like a medieval alchemist. After years of study in Paris, beneath the stern tutelage of famed surgeon Alexis Carrel, he began to nurture a radical belief that aging was not divine punishment. Let me know your thoughts down below. Then stay tuned for more information on how you can get your hands on our new supplement, The Greatest Showman. It's free. Just click the link in the description. Also, a huge thank you to all of our patrons who make incredible videos like this one possible. To learn how you can support us and all the perks we have to say thank you, head over to our support page. But a mechanical failure one that could be rewired. And so he hunted for the mechanism. By 1910, Voronov had performed hundreds of surgeries on eunuchs in Egypt, noting with obsessive detail how the absence of glands altered their vigor, their memory, even their gaze. He became convinced the key to youth lay in the glands, those secretive sacs of hormonal mystery. If one could replenish the body's elixir, he reasoned, one could halt the clock. But where would he find the fuel? Human donors were limited, unwilling, or dead. So he turned to our closest kin, monkeys. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally. He believed that beneath their hairy chests and feral grins pulsed the same life force that had fled from aging men. There lived a man who dared to trespass where few had even thought to look. His name was Sergei Voronov, a name now barely whispered in textbooks, but once spoken with awe, fear, and a twisted kind of reverence. They called him the surgeon of virility, the prophet of youth, the man who promised immortality with a scalpel in one hand and a monkey-esque gland in the other. Voronov was born in 1866 in a crumbling village along the Black Sea, and so began the curious ballet of grafting. In 1920, on the outskirts of Nice, in a marble-tiled clinic scented with ether and orchids, Sergei performed his first monkey testicle transplantation. The patient was a 72-year-old diplomat with rheumy eyes and a failing voice. The gland of a young baboon extracted with ceremonial precision was grafted into his scrotum. Voronov watched the old man closely in the weeks that followed, like a priest at a resurrection. And then, it happened. The man claimed renewed appetite, sharper vision, a desire for women, poetry, cigars. Word spread like a fire lit beneath a cathedral. Parisian salons buzzed with rumors. Men of title and fortune began arriving at Voronoff's clinic like pilgrims at a sacred spring. They came from Spain, from the Ottoman courts, from Chicago. Each paid small fortunes to have monkey glands sewn into their bodies with delicate silk thread, and each left swearing they felt younger, stronger, more alive. It was grotesque and glorious. But here's the thing, monkey glands didn't actually make people feel healthier. That didn't stop him from trying though. So, do you think monkey gland therapy will make a comeback? In the salons of Monte Carlo and the smoky parlors of Vienna, Voronoff's name became a whispered incantation. Aging magnates toasted him with trembling hands. Silent film stars flirted in low voices about getting the monkey touch. It was no longer medicine. It was myth. But beneath the surface of fame, Sergei began to unravel. He had tasted adoration and now hungered for something more potent proof. Not testimonials, not gossip. He wanted numbers, charts, permanence. In 1923, he commissioned an estate in Grimaldi, overlooking the cliffs like a Gothic temple of science, there in sunlit cages. He raised a private zoo, rhesus macaques, baboons, langurs, each hand-fed, monitored, named. He called it his orchard of youth. Assistants whispered about late-night surgeries, strange cries in the trees, and monkeys that looked at them with knowing eyes. Sergei's notebooks grew frantic. He began experimenting with female subjects, women barren from age, desperate for hope. He implanted ovarian tissue from apes into their bodies, tracking menstrual cycles with cold precision. One woman claimed to feel reborn, another vanished entirely. By now, the French Academy had grown wary. They wanted data, not parables, and so Sergei invited them to his estate. One crisp autumn afternoon, draped in a white coat and cologne sharp as formaldehyde, he led a tour through the grounds. Observe, he said, pointing to a man jogging uphill at 79. 3 months ago, he could not lift a spoon. The guests clapped politely, but their eyes wandered. They saw the cages, the tiny surgical tables, the jars of preserved tissue glinting in the sun. They saw youth, yes, but at a cost. Back in Paris, the ridicule began. Cartoonists sketched monkey-headed men in top hats, smoking cigars and chasing girls. Playwrights wrote comedies with characters named Baron Banana and Count Simeon. Overnight, Sergei went from prophet to punchline. But he pressed on. By 1929, he claimed to have operated on over 500 men. Among them, statesmen, poets, generals. One Polish aristocrat wrote in his diary, "I weep less, I sleep deeper. I dream in color again." But another patient died in agony, his body rejecting the graft, turning against itself. The family sued, the press pounced. Still, Voronoff stood tall. He published books, gave lectures, toured America. At the Waldorf Astoria, he dined on pheasant and spoke of a coming age where no man would die unless he wished it. He was applauded, and yet behind the applause there was a chill, for the world had begun to change. In the shadows, Nazi scientists were beginning their own experiments, whispering of bloodlines and purity. Across the Atlantic, Americans were sterilizing the unfit, carving eugenics into law. What had once been eccentric ambition now echoed something darker. The monkey glands became a grotesque symbol of pride, of folly, of man's refusal to bow before time. Then came the war. The Grimaldi estate was seized. The monkeys were released or slaughtered, no one knows for sure. Sergei, now an old man, stood in a crumbling villa in Lausanne, watching the Alps turn black under the storm clouds of history. He still believed that no one was listening. In his final years, Sergei Voronoff drifted through Europe like a forgotten apostle. He no longer spoke on stages, no longer dined with dukes or debated with doctors. He wandered in quiet gardens, scribbling in the margins of medical journals no one read anymore, speaking aloud to no one but the wind and the memory of monkeys. To the world, he had become a relic, ridiculous at best, dangerous at worst. But in his mind, he was still racing time. On the edge of respectability, where ethics blur and curiosity reigns, he is remembered, not as a doctor, or see a gleam in the eye of a man too old to stand, but somehow stronger than he should be? Remember this story. Go to our channel to watch more videos like this. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss an upload. Remember the man who promised youth from the bones of beasts. And ask yourself, what would you trade to turn back the clock? Because someone, somewhere is still asking that same question right now. Not as a butcher, but as something far more dangerous, a dreamer who refused to grow old, still chasing the fire he believed he once held in his hand. He died in 1951, in a rented flat in Lausanne. No newspaper printed his obituary. In the Soviet Union, rumors emerged of secret experiments on aging generals, involving animal tissue and organ grafts in China. Whispers passed through surgical circles of hybrid research of chimeric attempts to merge man and beast. And in California, a wealthy entrepreneur began cryogenically freezing his body, hoping for resurrection through the miracles of tomorrow. In each of these stories, buried beneath the jargon and ambition was a shadow, a ghost, the same spark of obsession that once lit Sergei's eyes. No, students carried on his work. A fraud, a visionary born a century too soon. They point to his notebooks, half science, half scripture filled with anatomical drawings beside biblical quotes, ink-stained pages where hormone levels mingled with philosophical pleas. To stitch the soul, he once wrote, one must first understand its vessel. But perhaps the most haunting testimony comes not from scholars, but from those who received his treatment. Some lived long, uneventful lives. Others claimed visions of forests, of screaming simians, of fingers not their own. One patient, a retired opera singer from Naples, left behind a letter before he disappeared. I feel another heartbeat inside me. It is not mine. It is older, wiser, watching. Science dismissed it as delusion. But others, particularly those in fringe communities of longevity research, began to revisit Voronoff's theories. They analyzed his tissue samples, re-examined his techniques, and quietly, a few began to ask questions that had long been sealed behind ridicule. If aging is decay, could it be reversed? If hormones are language, could new words be written? And if the self is merely chemistry, then what exactly was it that Voronoff awakened in his patients? His name, once emblazoned across lecture halls and clinic doors, faded like ink soaked in formalin. Medicine had moved on. Hormones were now understood, isolated, synthesized. Testosterone could be bottled and sold. No one needed baboon testicles anymore, but something strange happened in the decades that followed. Historians now debate, was he mad? Today, the name Sergei Voronoff is rarely spoken, but deep in the archives of rogue biology and forgotten medicine, his fingerprints remain. So if you ever walk the corridors of a private clinic, hear whispers of untested rejuvenations. Thank you for watching.